Hi, I'm Jeff. This is Tropical Plants at 53 degrees north. Now today I wanted to share with you a little bit of research I've done and a few things I've picked up on the way. As a lot of you know, I'm pretty new to orchids. It's something I've only been doing since, well, on and off I'd say a couple of years, but really seriously since I got the greenhouse, which would have been last May. So what I want to talk to you today about is the parts of the flowers and the types of orchids, something a little bit more technical, you know, don't get carried away, this isn't a science lesson, but just something that will certainly help my growing so far, help my understanding. And some of this stuff I've only picked up really recently, as I've been moving along and buying things every month. So what I want to do is just have a little chat about some of the things that crop up in comment sections and in descriptions, and people talk about it, and I suppose if it's something that they've known and learned quite a long time ago, they're not really likely to give any kind of definition for it. So I thought, right, well, okay, let's look some of this stuff up and let's see if it helps my understanding a little bit more. So first of all, I've picked up that there are two main groupings of orchids, and before I just mention this, I just want to say that the thing with groupings, any kind of scientific groupings, the problem with it is that there are so many types and varieties and exceptions. It becomes really rather difficult to put things into basic categories, and this really is probably why orchid names, the Latin names, are changing quite a lot as more and more research into these things happens. You find that there are probably just as many exceptions as there are followers of the rules or the patterns. So it's always worth remembering. So if I'm going to talk to you about the different groupings, these are very broad groupings. You will probably find that it's difficult to always categorize something in one of these groupings unless you really know what you're talking about.
If you're new to my channel, click the subscribe button, ding the notification bell, and you won't miss any updates.
So anyway, let's start off. Two main sorts of orchids. One of them is called a monopodial orchid, and the other group is the sympodial orchid. These are terms I've only just recently come across. So the monopodial orchids are things that only have one stem up the middle. So things like Vanda type orchids. This one is a Rhinanthera, but it's a Vanda type orchid. It's certainly a monopodial orchid. Pardon me. So what we have here is, if I was to take that out, there is not a great deal going on inside there actually. We've got a root in the middle, down the middle. We've got a single stem, we've got the leaves either side of the stem, and there's a root that seems to be shooting up for the heavens there, an aerial root, and a growing tip on the end. So monopodial orchids, and I'll show you another one, is the smaller of the groups. So here is an actual Vanda. So we've got roots coming off at the end there, a few kind of wispy ones as well, some thicker ones, and we've got the central stem, and all the new leaves are formed from the tip there, right from the very top. All the ones below it are the older leaves, and we find that the flowers come from the internodes, so between the leaves there. So this is also a monopodial orchid. So these are the smaller of the two groups. The larger of the two groups are the sympodial. Oh, by the way, another of the monopodials that I've got in the greenhouse here is the Phalaenopsis. I've got it kind of hanging down there. But again, you can see we've just got that one main stem, and we've got the new leaves coming from the end of the stem, and the roots all attached to that stem. So that's a monopodial orchid. Most of the orchids, the bigger group by far, are the sympodial, and the sympodial orchids are categorized as growing in a specific kind of a manner. The way they grow, and there's lots and lots to show and demonstrate here. I'll take this one out. The way they grow is we have a bulb, a pseudobulb in fact, which is a storage organ coming up from a creeping rhizome. So you can see, this is where I need a few hands. Over on your right there, that little tiny one, that would have been the first pseudobulb. That will have had its own leaf and it will have had a bloom coming from there. Then a much bigger one to the left of that, and then a much bigger one to the left, and you can see the direction that it's going in. So the latest pseudobulb is this one that my finger's touching there, and that is a nice big swollen pseudobulb which stores water and some food, really helps protect the plant in times of drought. And then up, as we move up, we've got the new leaves, another new leaf in the middle there, and the flower spike will come from the middle. Now that could have, and if I just turn it round, and it does in fact have, you can just see there is an eye which has a new forming growth, and in that manner that's the way that the rhizome carries on and continues. So next year that will develop and we'll have another pseudobulb a little bit further along. And this one here, I don't know whether that's got, it has got a dormant side out the bottom there. I think that one is going black. But they can branch off in all sorts of directions. So you end up with like a front and back of the plant on sympodial orchids. So we've got, in this particular case, where all the space is at the back, that's not likely to get the new growth. So when we plant these in the pots, we have to make sure that we put them in such a way that the front, the lead bulb, or the front bulb as opposed to the back bulb, is the place that has lots of space. And you can see that all the new roots are also coming from the lead bulb at the front there. So these are sympodial orchids. So let's just have a look at some of the others. We have Cattleya. Cattleya are your classic sympodial orchids, and again we've got back bulbs at the back, exactly the same thing, moving along, and as it moves along with the rhizome, every so often it will shoot up a new pseudobulb with either, in Cattleya's case, one leaf or two leaves. These are single-leaved Cattleyas. Now there are terms for this, I'm not sure I can remember them, they might come to me by the end of this video. So we also have, you can just again see down at the bottom there, let's see if I can zoom in, but there is an eye on this latest pseudobulb. This one is not as thick as the other ones, which probably says it's ready for a repot. So still on sympodial orchids, some more of the terms. Over here to this Oncidium sweet sugar, we have, now this one's still so I can point, we have back bulb, back bulb, back bulb, and you can see it's moving along there, and each new growth will have produced a flower spike, and the latest new growth, which is this one here, this one, and that's produced its own flower spike there at the end. And no doubt at some point, once the flowers have dropped, we will find that underneath here at the bottom we might find another new growth, hopefully anyway, if it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. So that's sympodial orchids. So we know that they grow horizontally from a creeping rhizome. They produce these pseudobulbs. The pseudobulb is a storage organ. You can usually tell when the pseudobulb starts to shrivel that it needs some water. So it does provide some resource for the plant. So if you don't water it for a while, then it's not going to die straight away. But if you do see, and as people might have noticed on one of my recent videos, if you do see very shriveled pseudobulbs, like on this Cattleya here, then you know that it is suffering a little bit and it's going to need something to be done with it, either some water for the roots. So if it hasn't got any roots, then you're just going to have to hope for the best that it does produce some before it finally gives up the ghost. So yeah, so that's sympodial orchids, and we have two types of pseudobulbs. Now this was quite new to me. We have something called a heteroblastic pseudobulb, and we have something called a homoblastic pseudobulb. So the heteroblastic we'll start off with. A good one to point out is the bulbophyllum. Now this is a classic heteroblastic pseudobulb because we have this single bulb here coming out with one leaf on the top, and that is one internode. So between you know, the beginning of the growth and where the leaf comes out. So if it looks like that, then it's a heteroblastic. And other heteroblastic pseudobulbs are, again, the sweet sugar, just swollen between one internode there. We also have probably, here we go, another oncidium here, the Shari baby. We have just a swollen area between one pseudobulb. The Ricara, again, between one pseudobulb. But on some orchids, which we call homoblastic, this has a swollen area between many internodes, and these are also of course known as canes, but they are still pseudobulbs. They're still a storage organ, and they do exactly the same thing. And you find that when they shrivel, then there's obviously something wrong, and they're ready for some, you know, for a little bit of water. Just notice that that's coming out there at the bottom. So this one is a dendrobium. The dendrobiums all seem to, I'm sure there's an exception somewhere, but they all seem to be of the cane variety. So they have the swollen areas between all these nodes, these internodes. We find with the homoblastic orchids that they flower where the leaf join is, so they flower on the internode, whereas the heteroblastic, like the cattleya, tend to flower either at the end or from the bottom. So let's see, what else have we got here? Inflorescence is something worth talking about. So an inflorescence isn't just the bloom, the inflorescence is the whole thing. So the whole structure of the flower. So we have, let's see, we have this stalk here, which is also known as the peduncle. So this is the peduncle. And then the little stalk that comes to the bloom, that's called the pedicel. And then obviously you've got the bloom at the end, but the whole thing is the inflorescence. So peduncle, pedicel and bloom gives you inflorescence. Which brings me to the parts of the flower. This is the really interesting bit because you can tell an orchid from another kind of plant by looking at the flower. We'll start with the easy ones first. This Burugera is a nice easy one. What we have here is dorsal sepal, lateral sepal, lateral sepal. The sepals were what form the bud. Even though they look like petals, they're not. You've got three petals, three sepals, three petals. One petal, two petal, three petal. The third petal, the lip, sometimes known as, or the Latin name is the labellum. This is a specialised, modified, almost like a landing pad really for an insect to come in, but it's still a petal. And then right in the middle there, this is the column, and right on the end is the anther cap. So they are the sexual organs of the plant, all the male and female, all bundled into this column. So that will have the ovary in there as well. Nice and easy on this one. Let's have a look at another flower, another orchid. So we've got the brassia here. So we've got, again, dorsal sepal, lateral sepal, and then we've got the three petals, 1, 2, 3. Third one is also known as the lip or the labellum, and then we've got the column in the middle and the anther cap right there in the centre, which gives us the male and female organs. Some orchids it's quite tricky to spot the different parts. Like for this one for example, this sweet sugar. Now you would look at that and think, right, well, where's the 3 sepals? Well, the trick here is to turn it around. And what have we got here? We've got dorsal sepal, the 2 lateral sepals at the bottom there, and then we've got the 2 petals there, but this one big huge petal at the bottom here, the most of it, like the dress of the dancing lady, is the labellum. So it's been heavily modified there, hasn't it, to produce this very, very large landing pad here for insects. And then the column and the anther cap. Oh, and I've just knocked his cap off. Right in the middle there, which gives us the, if I can get hold of that, oh, I've dropped it, which gives the insect the pollen from this plant, and also lets the insect deliver the pollen that it's brought along with it, to then produce the seeds. And of course, that's how they reproduce. They can also, produce keikis. That's quite well known, isn't it? Which I believe is Hawaiian for baby. I think I'm right. Okay, so what else have we not covered? So we've covered monopodial, sympodial. We've looked at the parts of the flower. We've looked at heteroblastic, homoblastic. We've talked about the inflorescence, the cataphyll. And the cataphyll is the sheath, just the fancy name for the sheath. So the sheath again is a modified leaf. I'm just looking to see if I can see one. It's easier to see on the cattleyas really. You could see how this one was covered in this like brown substance. I've not completely got it off yet, but it's just a modified leaf that gives the developing pseudobulb a bit of structure, a bit of strength, helps to prevent insects damaging it and so on. But once it's matured, you can pull that off because insects do tend to hide behind there. So that's your sheath. Stomata. The stomata are almost like pores on orchids. On a lot of orchids, they're underneath. I did find that some of them were on top. Cattleyas are definitely underneath. I found that bit out. The stomata help in gaseous exchange. So when a plant is photosynthesizing or when it's transpiring, it opens and closes the stomata depending on what it's doing at the time. In many orchids they're only open at night, so that means that it is almost useless in a way to spray your plant, because if you did spray it you would need to spray it underneath. So this is why it's more useful to have a fogger or just have a high humidity in the atmosphere, because for the stomata to actually not give out as much water, the humidity is going to need to get underneath them, which kind of brings me to that whole argument about whether it's worthwhile spraying them with a foliar feed. Information that I found, I did mention this the other day, but I found even more information, I think this was on the St. Augustine Society, to say that for the most part it's not really worthwhile. In other words, there are far more factors worth your attention in the growing of orchids than spraying it with a foliar feed. Spraying it with a foliar feed really is for the real experts. Even then, I have my doubts whether it actually does anything. We know for certain that the macronutrients are not likely to go in there. Calcium, magnesium, far better to take them in through the roots. The micronutrients might be able to go in. Just makes me wonder whether it's worthwhile. Roots we've talked about. No, we've not talked about roots yet. So roots are covered in something called velamen. On this vanda you can see it really clearly, this white stuff which is like a spongy covering which absorbs water really easily, and it just goes up to where the growing tip is. That's how we can tell these are growing, because we've got this green bit on the end. So that tends to go green when it's full of water, which is really useful. Orchids can also produce aerial roots as opposed to roots that go into the media. Now, I've not really managed to figure out the difference in them in terms of appearance. But what I did find was that if you have got aerial roots, don't try and stick them in some media, just leave them to do their own thing. The ones that are in media, fine, you can go and repot them, but if you've got some that are already in the air, then leave them in the air. That's where they're best adapted to. So I think I've covered everything there. Let me just have a quick look at my notes to see if I've missed anything out. Yeah, that's it for now. So I hope that was a bit of a help, and if I've got anything wrong, by all means jump in the comments there, tell me what you think. That's helped me. I'm really interested, in fact, in the parts of the flower. I think that's quite an interesting thing to look at these orchids and see if you can identify the different parts. On some of them, like we say, it's quite easy. On others, it's not quite as easy. I was a bit stumped with the sweet sugar until I looked at the back of it. This one is Dendrobium berryoda, so that's quite clear. I can see dorsal sepal, 2 lateral sepals. I can see the 3 petals with the labellum in the middle. That's easy. Just over looking over here at the Phalaenopsis, dorsal, lateral sepal, petal, modified petal, labellum, column in the middle, doddle. Marvellous. Right, okay, so we've got it covered. And finally on the Laelia, dorsal sepal, lateral, petal, and labellum in the middle with, if I just move that down, you can just see the column there. There's the column right under there in the middle. Yeah, okay, so that's it for now, and if you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you're not already, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.